So I wanted to give a little bit of context of why I'm even standing up here. I met HL the first day I came to Murray State, and I met him at an event, and I said, "Hey, I'm Katie. I need a church." And he said, "Well, good, because I have one, and I'll pick you up tomorrow." And he did, and the rest was history. And now I'm off. And Kara was actually the first person to take me out to lunch and try to get to know me. And they weren't dating at the time either. So Kara and H, some of my closest friends. So I'm standing up here. I don't know why, but I am. But I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Katie. I grew up in Louisville. I was born in South Korea. Grew up here in Louisville. Went to college. Stayed at Murray State for 8 years. It seemed like forever, but I loved it and helped out with campus ministry, worked at the university with Kara. And then I moved to Korea for a year and a half, and South Korea. And I loved it. It was a life-changing experience for me. And I moved back in 2013. So one of the things that I always said was, I will never move back to Louisville. Never. Never. And here I am. And I don't know how long I'll be here, probably for a long time, because I said that. So that's kind of about me, and I just wanted to share with you. But really what I'm going to do today is just share my story. I had a lot of ideas as to what was going to be said today, and really it just came down to, Katie, share your story. And so that's what I'm going to do. I was adopted from South Korea. I'm going to start at birth. I was adopted when I was 4 months old in South Korea. I came here, and my mom is here, actually. You can say hi to her. Hi, Sue. I don't even know where she is. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She's here. So I grew up here. I grew up going to church, grew up knowing who God is, but in my mind, I had formed this idea of who God was, and he was this giant blob. I mean, I don't know what else to, maybe like a Disney kind of thing going on. Anastasia? I don't know. This big blob that just struck people down with lightning whenever they did something really super bad. And that was my idea of who God was. And it's kind of embarrassing. I think I probably carried it on for quite a long time into my teenage years. But that's kind of the idea of who I thought God was. By the time I was 17, I was in high school, I was a pretty depressed human being. I just felt like I didn't fit in. I felt alone. Even I had a ton of friends too, but I just felt so alone. And I remember distinctly thinking, there is a circle around me, all of my closest friends, and I'm reaching for them. I'm so close to them, but I can't reach them. That's how I felt. I felt like they were so close, yet so far away. But I couldn't touch them, and I didn't feel that closeness. So for quite a while, that's how I felt, and I went into a pretty large depression. Even though I had an amazing support at home, I had support from my family, support from my friends, but I just felt this emptiness in me. And I was 17 when I had decided, and again, I grew up going to church, but I was 17 when I had decided, what do I have to lose? My friend invited me to go to her church. And it was the first time I had really heard a young person talk about Jesus, about how he had changed her life. It was the first time. And I remember her talking about spiritual masks and how God had dealt with her at this conference that she went to, about how she had so many spiritual masks. And I'm sitting in the pews, and I'm thinking, I don't have a spiritual mask. I don't know who, I don't even know who God is, really. But I knew what a mask meant. I was this funny human being. I don't know why I keep saying human being. I was a funny student. I just laughed things off. I didn't want to address what was really going on internally. And so I knew about masks. And so when she started talking about that, I thought, oh, yeah, I get that. And so from that day, that was in, I think, 2001, I had decided, I'll just give this Jesus thing a try. And that's kind of how I viewed it, Jesus thing, a try. So I started going to church. Well, I mean, I always went to church, but I got involved in church, and I started reading the Bible. And man, the Bible was so hard to read. It was bizarre. I mean, I couldn't even decipher stories. I was like, I don't understand. Even though I had grown up knowing these stories, reading the Bible was really hard for me. But as time went on, as I continued to read the Bible, it just clicked. I understood who Jesus was and why he died. And, I grew up in a Christian school, so I knew about Jesus dying for me. But it did not make sense until I started reading for myself. So, in 2003, I went to college. And again, I stayed there for 8 years. And that's when I really started digging in. All right, this is what the Christian life is about. I'm getting it. And I learned about spending time with God. I learned about praying. I learned about being around like-minded people and caring for people that don't think the same way as you, and really loving people. I learned about that in college. It was an important time in my life. In 2008, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and the reason why I bring it up is because it's a very, very significant time in my life, because at that point, I had gone through a very large struggle. I didn't know what diabetes was. I remember the doctor saying, you need to call the pharmacist and pick up your medication and call the nutritionist. That was it. And then she said, do you have any questions? And I said, let's take a time out. I'm sorry. So you're saying that I have diabetes. I don't even know what that is. Can you explain what this disease is that I've heard of, but I don't know anything about? And so they explained, and it was a very, very difficult time, because it wasn't just adjusting what I ate. It was adjusting everything. Everything. It was mental, it was emotional, and it was physical. I had to change a lot of different things. It's very, very challenging. I ended up going into a very dark place, a depression, when it carried over into 2009. 2009 was a really hard year. And I had just gotten a new job. It was pretty stressful. I loved it, but it was really stressful. And I was in graduate school full-time, and I was doing work full-time. So it was just a very difficult time, and I'm trying to learn how to manage my life and balance, and I'm pretty terrible at it, turns out. And so it was really difficult for me. In 2010, I went to this conference. I'm sorry, I'm throwing out all these dates because I remember them that way. 2010, in March, there was a conference that was going to Nashville. And I said, I'm there. I am there. I want God to do something incredible. So I'm driving. So I remember, I actually just recalled this with a friend, and I didn't even know they went. But we went to this conference, and I remember sitting there in the seat and saying, God, I am not leaving this place until you do something. And I had to drive back to Murray that night, and it was about 9 p.m. It's about a 2-hour drive. And so I had said, God, I'm not leaving until you do something tonight, and I'm going to stay here until it ends. But I know you're going to do something because you're faithful. So At that point in my life, this is pretty significant. What I envisioned for my life at that point was to be in the mission field doing some exotic mission work. I don't know why I thought mission work was just so exotic and amazing, and it's hard work. I mean, Liz knows. She went to Nepal, and she's tired. But it's hard work, right? But in my mind, I had glamorized what I thought God wanted me to do at that time in my life, when really, He wanted me to be right where I was in Murray, Kentucky, learning about Him, being disciplined in the small things, so that in the future I could go and do whatever He called me to do. But I was bitter at God. I was bitter. I said, God, I don't like that I'm in Murray. Why am I just feel like I'm stuck here. That's how I felt. I felt stuck in my life. And so that's kind of the context of where I was coming from going to this conference. So I remember I was standing and there was worship music, lots of praying going on, and I was standing like this. Wasn't even looking at anyone, just standing, worshiping God. And I remember this girl coming up to me. I don't know where she came out. I don't know where she came from, but I have my hands like this, and I remember she put both of her hands on the palm of my hands. She said, "Can I pray for you?" And I said, "Yes, God. Yes, you can pray for me." And so I will never forget this for the rest of my life. It was a turning point in my life. She prayed for me, and I believe God uses people that we don't know to speak into our lives. And I think He does it a lot with me because I tend to doubt Him a lot. Like, I don't know if that was you, God. But you can't deny when a stranger is telling you stuff that you've never told anyone, and you certainly don't even know their name, and they don't know your name. You can't deny that. So I think God uses that for me because I am hard-headed. So anyway, so this girl is praying for me, and I remember her saying, "You are like the girl in Luke 8. And in my mind, I'm like, ooh, I don't know that scripture. I don't know what's in Luke 8. I'm not that spiritual. I can't recall. And I'm glad she gave reference to it. So she says, it's about the girl, the daughter, who dies. And the father goes to Jesus and says, "My daughter is dying. You have to come and help and heal her." And so he goes and, we can go into it. So he goes and, I'm not going to give it away, actually. I'm not. Let's read it. I have the verses. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, Luke 8 is one of my favorite books in the Bible, favorite chapters in the Bible, period. It's loaded. All right. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. Now, let's take a time out. In Luke 8, you think you've had a busy day. Jesus had just gotten back casting out demons out of a guy across the lake. And then he's taking his boat ride home to the other side, and then there's a crowd waiting for him. And I envision like the Beatles, crowds rushing up, because they've heard what he's done. So keep in mind, this is Jesus' day here. So he gets back from casting out demons from this guy, and there's a crowd waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter about 12 years old, and she was dying. Okay, now, in between this story is another story that I did not include, but I will tell you about it. It's the woman that bled for 12 years, right? Now, again, this is Jesus' day. So These people, this guy is like, my daughter's dying, you have to come, and there's a crowd around Jesus, and so he's walking to the house, and then he gets stopped because he feels the power go out of him because someone has touched him. And it's this woman who's been bleeding for 12 years. 12 years. As a woman, I'm just like, that's crazy. That's insane. So this is all happening in the middle of Jesus going to this dying girl. Now it says, while Jesus was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore." So don't worry about it. She's already dead. I'm not sure if it was that nonchalant, but I would hate to get that news. But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well." And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James and the father and mother of the child. Now keep in mind, I think the crowd is still with him. They're still huddled around this house. And all were weeping and mourning for her, but he said, Jesus says, "Do not weep, for she's not dead. She's just sleeping." I'd be tripped out if someone said that to me. And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. One of my favorite stories of all time. I love it. Now, going back to Nashville and the conference that I was at, I'm glad I didn't finish that story. It's funny. When she was praying for me, one of the things, probably the only thing that I remember her saying was this. She said, "You were like the girl in Luke 8. Your dreams are not dead. They've only been sleeping." And I remember at that point in my life, of course, I feel stuck. I feel depressed. I feel bitter at God that he has me in the place that he has me at. And to hear a stranger speak into my life and say, your dreams, the things that God has planted in your life, they are not dead. They've only been sleeping. You've just been waiting. And God knows that you've been waiting. And it's going to be okay because he knows. Now, this was revolutionary. Of course, I'm like sobbing because I'm thinking, how does she know? And I'm like, God, you're so good. I mean, it was just a mess of emotion. But I remember thinking, this is God using a stranger to speak to me about my life and what I'm going through. How much love does he have for me, for every single person? That's mind-blowing to me. So, when I got home, so I'm like marinating on that idea. My dreams are not dead, they've only been sleeping. Dreams are not dead, they've only been sleeping. I'm just like marinating in this. What in the world does this mean? So then I had to go back home and I had to reread Luke 8 because of course I still didn't know the story very well. And there were two things that really stuck out to me. The first one is, she is not dead, she's sleeping. Just that last, one of the last verses. Most of us probably will not die and then come back to life. Probably not that situation. But what I equivalent she is not dead but sleeping to be is waiting on God because he hears you. We all go through circumstances that are really tough. Really tough. For me, mine would be diabetes. I've prayed for healing since 2008. and I've received prayer at probably every conference I've been to. And there are days where my faith is so high, I mean, I could take someone out with all the faith that I had. All of it. And then there's other days where I'm like, can I just borrow your faith? Like, could you just tell me something good that I can hold on to for the day, because I don't know if I can make it? That's kind of like how I am, because I'm human. But that was my circumstance, that he hears me. I may not be healed right at this exact moment, but I know I will be. I know I will. I just started insulin. I share a lot, so you're going to know a lot about me by the end of this. I take insulin shots just recently, and nothing else has really helped prior to that. Nothing has really helped my numbers get down. Insulin has been incredible. I have had instant results. And because of that, I believe God is using that insulin to make me healthy. And I believe eventually, because I believe God, that he desires to heal, I won't be on insulin for the rest of my life. My doctors tell me I will. They say it's inevitable. But I know I won't. But I'm obedient to do it now. That's my job, to do it right now. And I'm going to wait for God however long it takes. And I'm going to believe God however long it takes. And so it may be sleeping right now, but it's not dead. It's not dead. Does that make sense? All right. Whew, good. That's good. Over the years, what I've really had to do is just about everything. Because I don't know why, but I tend to get really discouraged about a lot of different things. So I have to tell myself, your dreams are not dead, they've only been sleeping. Your hopes are not dead, they've only been sleeping. Your prayers are not dead, they've only been sleeping. I have to tell myself this all the time and remind myself, because it's so easy to get discouraged, right? Because we see the natural. We see what's going on. My body's not getting well. And so therefore, God must not be answering my prayers. He must not be moving in my life. We don't know that. We don't know what God is doing. He's constantly moving things along. He's constantly listening. There's not one prayer he hasn't heard. That's what blows my mind. Just because God hasn't answered your prayer immediately doesn't mean he isn't listening or moving. That's revolutionary to me, because it'll build your faith. It'll build your faith up. Romans 12:12 says, rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. Now, this may be, how many words? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 words. But man, these are hard, right? So let's just read it again. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. I don't know about you, but I tend to, sometimes I rest in the Lord, or I get so tired of when I pray that I just fall asleep. Resting in the Lord. You all know you've done it. Every single one of you have rested in the Lord, and you're just asleep. It is hard doing all of these things, right? But that's what the word says. It says, be constant in prayer. Be patient in your waiting, in your trials. Waiting in your hope that God is going to heal you, that God is going to get you out of your financial debt, that God is going to provide the food that you need to eat for the week. I've been there. I get it. So the second verse, Matthew 21:22. And whatever things you ask in prayer, believing you will receive. Oh, that's a heavy-duty one. It kind of seems like a simple formula, right? Like, Well, I'm not really good at math, and my dad would be probably ashamed of me if I tried. But it just seems like if you ask and you believe, then you will receive. That's hard. It's hard stuff. And I don't know why some things it takes a lot longer than others. I have no clue. I'm not even going to try to explain because I don't know the answer. But the Word of God says that if you ask in prayer and you believe, you will receive. Build your faith. Okay, the second thing that I really pondered about is this verse, but taking her by the hand, he called, "Child, arise." I don't know why, but I feel like I have to point when I say that. "Child, arise," and her spirit returned, and she got up at once. I love that verse. Because what in my mind, what it equivalates to is God makes all things new. I love that verse. To me, it means God is giving us the strength while we wait. Isaiah 40:31. I think it's a very common verse. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Because it takes a lot of strength to wait for something you've been hoping in for a long time. We've all been there. We've all had a prayer that we've asked God for a long time. And it's hard to keep that strength up. But if you wait on the Lord, He will renew your strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Pretty encouraging. And the second thing that I noticed was that God desires to restore, and He loves to restore. He loves restoring things. He loves it. And He doesn't just do it halfway. It's a full restoration. You know what I'm saying? In 2 Corinthians 13:9, it says, "For we are glad when we are weak and you are strong. Your restoration is what we pray for." That's what I can hope for. So, what does this all mean? What I think, now let me just say this. I have thought about this passage since that conference in 2009. And I've never talked about it, I don't think, ever, in a sermon or anything. But what I've learned from it is that God loves to restore. He desires to restore what was broken, what was lost, what you've been waiting for. And He hears you. I think that's the second part. He hears you.